A quick note before we begin. Today's passage reflects the attitudes of 19th century time, and some language or depictions may now feel outdated or offensive. We share it as written to preserve its context and meaning. Alas, I may say with Lucullus, if I could have anticipated the honor of your visit, I would have prepared for it. But such as it is my hermitage, it is at your disposal, such as is my supper. It is yours to share, if you will. Ali, is the supper ready? At this moment the tapestry moved aside, and a Nubian, black as ebony, and dressed in a plain white tunic, made a sign to his master that all was prepared in the dining room. Now, said the unknown to Franz, I do not know if you are of my opinion, but I think nothing is more annoying than to remain 2 or 3 hours together without knowing by name or appellation how to address one another. Pray observe that I too much respect the laws of hospitality to ask your name or title. I only request you give me one by which I may have the pleasure of addressing you. As for myself, that I may put you at your ease, I tell you that I am generally called Sinbad the Sailor. And I, replied Franz, will tell you, as I only require his wonderful lamp to make precisely like Aladdin, that I see no reason why at this moment I should not be called Aladdin. That will keep us from going away from the East, whither I am tempted to think I have been conveyed by some good genius. Well then, Signor Aladdin, replied the singular amphitryon, you heard a repast announced. Will you now take the trouble to enter the dining room, your humble servant going first to show you the way? Okay, more things getting in the way of diving into Auguste Mackay and romanticism. Let's just be honest, folks. Let's just talk about it, pull it out right in front of us, and why not? We gotta take the text for what it is. And sometimes there are racial characterizations that are toxic, that are ugly. It's not for me to determine the extent to which something is offensive. I just want to acknowledge that this is not great, but we're going to take the story as it is. We're going to be mature, work our way through it, and give it the respect it deserves. It appears Dante has hopefully employed, I'm going to hope it's an employment situation, a servant that is preparing supper. As the text says, a Nubian, apparently named Ali. More connections to Tales of Arabian Nights. Maybe should have been mentioned before this, but Dante assuming the namesake of Sinbad the Sailor, and Franz acknowledging how he feels in this situation, also being in that world, has taken on the mantle of Aladdin in this situation. So there's a bit of what is termed Orientalism, this kind of glorifying the exotic nature of Eastern culture, presented as mysterious or sensual, wealthy. And it was common at the time. There's a fascination for this stuff. I want to say it stopped around this time, but it went well into the 20th century. You look at authors like Robert E. Howard and Lovecraft, and there's lots of Orientalism happening in those stories as well, deep into the 1930s and even early 40s, which is 100 years after this is written. So I just want to acknowledge all that. I'm not the expert to speak at the insensitivity of all this stuff. I just want to acknowledge that it's here, and we have to just kind of earmark it. We can be adults and hold the story and enjoy the story for what it is, while also acknowledging that that is going on as well. There's a bit of like Arabian cosplay happening between Dante and Franz here, which is what it is. So all of that tricky and important stuff aside, the pleasantries continue here. Franz is woven under the spell of Dante, I'm going to call him Dante, not Sinbad, and about to dine with him. I guess we'll find out what is going to come of their relationship. Let's, since we're talking historical stuff, we're talking cultural stuff, we're talking society, we're talking race, we're talking all that stuff in this episode, why don't we use that to talk about what the Romantic movement was? So Romanticism comes in, again, this is just my simple research. I am not a teacher. I'm not an educator. I'm not even that smart of a person. I'm just going off of bullet points from what I've written down, doing some basic Google searches and spending a half an hour looking into this stuff. But before Romanticism, European literature, especially in France, was kind of dominated by neoclassicism and Enlightenment. And those things centered around the core ideas of reason, human nature being best understood through logic and order, that there's a kind of, I don't want to say moralistic, but a idea that art should instruct and model the proper behavior of reason and logic and all of those things. Rules are good. Excess is bad. That sort of idea. That's where you get writers like Voltaire coming in. He was definitely an Enlightenment writer. He wrote satire, yes, but it was mostly through reason and moral clarity than anything else. Romanticism comes in with a different set of core beliefs, and it's kind of an argument against neoclassicism. Romanticism is driven by passion, imagination, moral struggle. So not a clean-cut set of standards to live by, but the conflict that one runs into while trying to live up to those standards and maybe failing or conflicting with those rules. There's a sense of longing, of loss, deals with injustice, desire, all of these things that don't fit cleanly into containers. In fact, all of the things that are designed to be combustible against those containers. That's essentially what Romanticism was. Now, that feels kind of like a textbook definition, but when you start to look at how you employ that in your stories, whether it's playwriting, whether it is serialized stories like we're reading, the novel, literary works, etc., it's that those arguments suddenly become political. If Enlightenment, with its logic and reason, sets up rigid standards, then you build philosophies off of that can be your engine for society, for politics, for governing. And when you have Romanticism coming in and challenging that, writing stories that disrupt the idea of order and rules, then you can see how it can become a disrupting force in politics and culture. It changes the way people think. It allows people to embrace the messiness, to find value in imagination and creativity. And this is important as to why it takes root, I think, at this time, because remember, we're coming out of a revolution in France. Only a decade or two, this book starts with the end of Napoleon's reign. Well, Napoleon was on the rampage from the late 18th century through the early 19th century, which is exactly when Romanticism is coming in. So you get people witnessing anxiety about their, country, their identity, both as a person of a country and as an individual. Class and power is changing constantly. Rapid regime changes. There's collapse of hierarchies. So Romanticism is reflecting the things that people are feeling at that time. At the risk of having this episode go on forever and ever and ever, I'm going to save Dumas' place within Romanticism for tomorrow. So let's leave that until then. Okay? Cool. I'll see you here then. Okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.